Welcome to SFG Top Performance. Today we have a little bit different episode for you. Mark is gone, so we have a guest speaker in from Loveland Products. With us today is our usuals Charles and Jason, and we have Steve Cortum from Loveland Products talk about some of their products this year. Charles, would you like to give an application update?
Yes, sir. Everything's been going great the last couple of weeks. Had our little rainy spell there for a while. Elevators are getting topped off, grain. Everything's getting about full up here in our north division. There's still got a little ways to go on the south. Grain bins are all getting topped off, and we got lucky and didn't have to dry a lot this year, so they'll be a lot easier to cool the bins down versus having a bunch of hot grain in there. So hopefully the weather will cool down here next week so we can get everything cooled down and cored. Application-wise, we've been hitting her hard with anhydrous this week. We need about 2 weeks worth of work, but 2 weeks worth of good dry weather, but it sounds like it's going to rain about first of the week, but that'll get the first run through. It'll dry up again. Super Grow's been going good. Been running hard there for a week and a half on that. Lime kind of got stopped because of the trucks. We got to kind of pick and choose where we're going to go, and same thing with dry fertilizer, but the grain's winding down, so that'll free up more trucks. But everything's going full swing and as hard as we can go. And just once again, you need about twice as many people for about 2 weeks here, and we sure can't make that happen. So anyway, that's it.
Good enough. Jason, this later in the season, the season winding down, how are the end of the year yields? Are there anything going on in the field noteworthy right now?
In the northern territory, most of the crops are yielding very well. A lot of beans, in the mid 50s, corn very well, 170 to 200. I have been on 2 calls in the last week with poor grain on the side hills. Most of that is thin soil to burn up. That's typically what we're finding. It's nothing wrong. It's just we can't take that 6 weeks without a rain. So that is, as far as grain, that's what we're finding. Many farmers, like Charles said, are starting fertilizer applications and anhydrous. I just want to give a little safety deal. Make sure everybody's careful. Make sure you're wearing your gloves and goggles and bleeding off them valves when you take them off. And if you have problems, make sure to call your agronomist or whoever's taking care of you. Don't try to dig into something and get hurt. We don't want any safety issues. We care about our customers, and we want to make sure that you're safe and can go home safe every night. And as far as what we're finding in the fields, that's about it. It's that soybean selection time, and we talked last week about Extendiflex and Enlist and the different options, and making sure we have a good pre-down. And Steve is here. And Steve, what are your growers in the area that you're working in? What are they like doing to successfully manage the weed-resistant issues?
Well, we at Loveland have been battling resistance, me and my career, for over 30 years. And pre-emergent herbicides play a major role, followed by a solid, well-timed post-pass. And that post-pass has been changing with the market and the soybean genetics over the years. And the purpose of that is to keep the fields clean. The reason we're doing a pre-emergent is to keep the fields clean until canopy closure. We have found the easiest way to control resistant water hemp is never allow it to emerge.
I agree. What are the most important features a grower should consider when choosing a pre-emergence herbicide? What should you look for?
You should choose one that contains, number one, multiple modes of action. Matador S by Loveland contains 3 modes of action. Broad spectrum is important. Make sure your problem weeds are listed as controlled species. And then application flexibility, because in Iowa, weather throws us a monkey wrench every once in a while. So it's nice to not have to run the product when they do that. We don't have to run the product back to the dealer and switch gears and change our plans. Matador fits pretty nicely in that flexibility market, and I'll talk about that a little bit later.
All right. There's a lot of, low-cost, cheap options out there that just don't last as long as we'd like them to. And I know you offer a very good value product. And what can you do to make them last longer and add value to us?
I'm going to be pretty blunt there. Use 4 rates. So 2/3 rate, or even less, will be just as clean as a full rate for the first 10 days, 2 weeks. Length of control will be the difference following that. So Matador, we've been seeing last a good 3 to 4 weeks, most years, depending on rainfall and precipitation.
And I agree. If you need to watch your value more than your price, and a lot of this low price stuff, you're cutting rates and they don't last as long as we'd like them to. So we need to make sure that we're doing what we want it to and getting control. So, with all these options, what soybeans are you recommending, or what do you like for next year?
I like Matador S because it has 3 modes of action, broad spectrum, can be tank mixed with phenoxys and glyphosate, making for an overall nice no-till burn down. And I would say a good percentage of the soybeans in this area are no-till. It also brings residual combo. It's a nice burn down and residual combo. Has no carryover issues and few planting restrictions for the following year.
Steve, I'll jump in here really quick. Is there any time you need to wait to plant soybeans, or from soybeans emerging through Matador? Is there any restrictions like that?
No, there wouldn't be. The only restriction would be, and I was going to catch that a little bit later, but that's a
Sorry
good
about
question,
that.
Derrick. No, thanks. So Matador, as I said earlier, is very flexible. It can be put on pre-emerge. We can start putting it on late March, early April, and come back and plant no-till right into that. You can run the applicator on more conventional soybeans. You can run ahead of the planter, behind the planter. The key point with Matador is the main restriction is we need to have it on before the soybeans emerge. So at that point, we're going to have to look at other choices besides Matador.
So you would agree that as long as you have a good pre, that your enlist and your dicamba bean isn't as critical as having a good pre and taking care of the field. That's what I mentioned last week, and I believe that as long as we take care of it, it doesn't matter what bean we're following it with, we're going to have good control as long as we're taking care of our fields up front and keeping them clean. And you would agree with that from your comments?
I have a very standard comment for that, and I think now is a good time to say it, is start clean, stay clean.
I agree with that 100%.
And your subsequent applications can be timed more at your leisure and be more effective.
I agree. What about changing your herbicide brand occasionally? Does that help fight our resistance? And is that what we're going to have to do in the future with no more coming on the market that we see?
No. That most pre's on the market today, and the reason I say that is most pre's on the market have the same modes of action. Therefore, when you change brands, you're simply just changing brands. You still have the same modes of action. You are not improving the resistant management by doing that. However, some pre's on the market only contain 1 or 2 modes. So, as I said earlier, Matador has 3 modes of action, and so the more modes of action in a herbicide, the better it's going to be against resistance.
Yes, I agree with that. Does Matador S fit into both conventional and no-till programs?
Yeah, and I think we kind of touched on that, but it's in recap, it's very well. By adding glyphosate, phenoxy herbicide to make sure we start clean and stay clean. In conventional, you can spray ahead of planter or behind. Just make sure you have Matador on prior to the emergence of the soybean.
Thank you, Steve. Derrick, you've been working with these plots a lot. What are you finding in them now, and what are your results, and are they the way you were hoping they were going to be?
Yes, we've had a lot of really good data from plots this year. Just finished up the last one this week, so we did a lot of them, and so I'm glad that we got them done, and now we just have to sit back and look at the data and really figure out what we can do to benefit people next year. 2 I wanted to talk about are the sulfur trial I talked about 2 weeks ago, and a nitrogen stabilizer trial. The sulfur trial from 2 weeks ago, I talked about the preliminary data that we were seeing north of 10 bushel increases and showing really good returns, and that was true throughout all the tests we did. We were showing positive responses. We were getting $10 to $15 per acre of return out of these products. I had 4 strips out there, and some were really high, some were lower, but it averages that. It just takes a lot of the risk out of it. And sulfur is just really important in a corn crop, and so I stress this one a lot, that if your P and K is correct and you're putting on enough nitrogen, the next thing in corn crop is sulfur, and that's just where you're going to see a lot of bang for your buck. What sulfur does in the plant is it helps metabolize that nitrogen. So this yellowing that we see from nitrogen, even if we put 200 pounds out there, if we don't have sulfur helps bring it into the plant. Sulfur helps make those proteins. It needs to be there with the nitrogen in order to make a good corn crop, and we're showing that on these fields where we're not putting sulfur now. So it's just ask us about sulfur. Ask anybody else, your neighbors, about sulfur to see if they're doing it. And I haven't run into anywhere where they say, oh yeah, we tried it once and it hasn't worked. It's kind of been foolproof, even more than the fungicides. I'm just a big proponent of that, putting the fertility on the ground, and we like it ground applied, because that's how, you got to put it towards the roots where they take it up. So that one I'm really excited about, and think we'll continue to boost how much sulfur we're putting out on the field. Second really important one that we did was a nitrogen stabilizer trial, and we tried 2 products, Function N and Nutrisphere. We've run Nutrisphere a lot in the past, and we want to try this Function N with it because it's a non-corrosive way that we can put nitrogen stabilizer in the tank instead of using the nitropyrin that gets a little makes things corrosive, plugs stuff up, and ease of access, a little safer product, non-flammable, that sort of thing. So we tested it, wanted to make sure it was going to work just as good as the stabilizer we're using now, and right now it looks like we're there. We had I had 5 strips of the Function with Nutrisphere on that Charles put on for me last year, and we were showing the same yield, if not a little bit better than the Nutrisphere. I don't think it's a better stabilizer per se as Nutrisphere, but it's just a different way to do it. Easy access, put it in the tank, don't think about it. You don't got to worry about pumps, don't got to worry about other stuff plugging up. It just ease of access, and it's working just about the same. This Function, it's a little bit different than Nutrisphere, that the way it stabilizes nitrogen. It works like some of the urea treatments, you could say. It's called DCD, and what that actually does is inhibit the ability of the bacteria to convert ammonium to nitrate, is what it does. So then we keep the nitrogen in the ammonium form, and it doesn't move throughout the soil, and that DCD stops that process of the bacteria moving it. Whereas Nutrisphere, it is a polymer, works very well. It's a polymer. It just essentially coats what the bacteria eat. So then the bacteria can't convert ammonium nitrate. It's just a different way to stabilize nitrogen, but it's working the same, ease of access. So we're going to hopefully see some more of that, get some more tests out there, and try it and make sure it continues to work.
Thank you, Derrick.
That is, unless anyone has any other questions about any Loveland products, appreciate Steve coming in, and we'll get back to working out in the field, and figure out what best products work on your farm for next year. So thank you for tuning in to SFG Top Performance, and we'll see you next time.